What I want you to think about when you're watching this presentation, because by the way, the other thing Brian does a little different than me is he really prepares for presentations. Like 40 plus hours he put into this thing. And what I want you to most think about when you think about OG Brian Solis, who's about to come on this stage, think about the fact that this is what you get to inherit, and that when he vanished into deep learning and all that, he's helped pave stuff from a whole different level. It's like Matrix stuff. He's at the end, the bullets can't hurt him anymore. Ladies and gentlemen, Brian Solis.
Oh man, all right. Well, I've got to get over these goosebumps. Thank you, Chris, and thanks, Peter. I'm gonna follow you. Can we get some YouTube clips playing and I'll sing over them? It's true. I did vanish from social media for a long time, and that was only because social media was in good hands with not only people like Chris, but the next generation of folks like you who were taking it over and making it bigger. I don't think, honestly, that I've ever talked about social media in such a large audience, which is ironic after all of these years of trying to pave the way for the future of social media, which goes back, believe it or not, to 1996, when things were forums and message boards and all kinds of, and by the way, if that's a foreign language, I'll explain it to you later. So I come here mostly because, well, I've never lost the passion for it. I just had to, I do deep research. I am studying digital transformation, corporate innovation, the future of governments, the future of societies right now. And, well, believe it or not, that keeps me off of really big stages. Because it's the stuff that we're all going to think about and care about in the next few years, and I'm passionate about it, but I'm still passionate about social media. And I also am passionate about my friends Mike and Phil, who were gracious enough to invite me to speak to you today. And I didn't take it lightly, and Chris is right, I did spend a whole bunch of time putting together a presentation of which I had to, at the end, cut about 100 slides off of it. Because when you talk about the past, present, and future of social media, what don't you want to talk about? What isn't important enough to make the 45 minutes that we have together? So I asked Mike and Phil if it would be okay if after this event, I stitched it all back together again and gave it to you as a little thank you. Well, that's the first time people applauded to say, hey, thanks for sending me 250 slides. PowerPoint, yes! No, but it's really a wonderful story, and I do want to share it with you, and that's what we're going to talk about today. So I know a lot of you are here because you have a business, you have a brand, you have products and services that you want to sell and you want to market, and social, look, is the best thing that's ever happened to us as human beings because we took control of media, we took control of the platforms, we got a voice that we didn't otherwise have. Somewhere in there, though, and what I want to share with you today and what Mike talked about this morning is the humanity of it all. What my friend Chris didn't mention, and I'm going to put this picture up while I talk about this. 2007. Yeah, Chris, we look better today. I'm just gonna say that. This was a time when the world could be anything, and it still is that. The thing about social media is that there's technology, and there's platforms, and there's live video, and there's gear, and there's this which has single-handedly transformed not only media, but all of us. How we behave, how we think, how we act. So somewhere along the way, I became an anthropologist, a digital anthropologist, to study the human side of all of this so that we can understand what it means for your business, but more importantly, what it means for you. And that's what I want to talk about today. Is that there's no shortage of amazing experts here. You've seen them all today. You'll see them tomorrow. They are the ones who are going to guide you and your business to be more successful than it is today. Allow me to take you on a journey of social media, of what it meant to me and where we were at back in those old days, and where it's going, and how we can help shape its future. See, I'm a hopeless optimist. I always want to see the best and the good in everything. And I've dedicated my work in translating, no matter what it was, into how it could be the best, whether it was personal branding, news, the future of media, business, customer service, you name it. Some of the things that came up along the way that inspired me was the basis for this entire presentation. This is what drove me 15, 16, 17, 18 years ago. What drove me a few years ago, what still drives me, is our story. I mean, we kind of, in some ways, take it for granted. We have access to all of these powerful tools. We have friends, we have followers, we have networks, we have this amazing event. But right there at the essence, at the core of all of it, was we got a voice. We didn't have to wait for people to tell us what the news was. We didn't have to wait for people to tell us what to do. We didn't have to just subscribe to the thought leaders of the old days. We got to be what we wanted to be. We got to inspire movements. We got to bring about change. All of that because of things like Twitter, or back in my day, friend feed, Pounce. Yeah, there's only a couple laughs. I get it. For everybody else, there were things before Facebook and Twitter. What inspired me the most, and this is what helped me start one of the first social and digital agencies in 1999, February 1999, was a book called The Clue Train Manifesto. Doc Searles, David Weinberger, Rick Levine. Markets are conversations, they said. It was all about the democracy of information. It was all about giving power to the person who didn't have a voice before and listening. Not just counting how many times someone mentioned you or what sentiment or how they talked about you. It was the fact that real human beings had a voice, and what were we going to do about it? See, the thing about this, and I'll be completely honest with you, I've never given this presentation before. In fact, in many ways, I'm like looking at these slides like, oh yeah, I put that together. The thing about social media, and the reason why I share that with you, is because transparency is a legitimate and a genuine business value proposition. It's honest. It's true, and that's what we got that we couldn't get from other things. Believe it or not, if Doc Searles would have had his way, this would be called the live web, not social media. We'd be at the live web marketing world. That was one of the contenders when we were all arm wrestling about what do we call this stuff. Shipley, I think, gets the credit for coming up with social media because that's what it was. And we all wrestled about, well, what's going to be the definition? And back in the early days, all of the definitions around social media were focused on technology and platforms and channels, but I threw my hat in the ring and felt like, let's get to the core of what it's really doing. It's empowering us to democratize information and influence. It gave us the ability to not just say something, but do something. And that, to me, and what I hope is for you, an opportunity for you to Control Alt Delete everything that we're doing and realize that this is that moment where we don't have to just be human again, but we can learn that other people who are on all of these channels are struggling to keep up with it all, but also build an audience that has an audience of an audience, where all of these channels just literally connect us in ways that hopefully build better communities and better outcomes, not just better business models. So let's take a look at the past. And I'll tell you honestly, this is where most of the slides got cut. I just loved going down memory lane. So the thing that Chris was alluding to earlier back in the day, and there are pictures before that picture I showed you, years before that actually. social media made the world a much smaller place. I think early days when I was doing analysis, and this sounds funny now because it's probably way larger of a number, but in the early days of social media, we had at least friends in 12 different countries and people you never met, right? Now it's probably every country just simply because we love fans and followers. But we were just geeks trying to make a dent in the universe, trying to use these platforms as a way to say, you know what? Wow, what a gift. What a gift all of this was. That we could take these tools and not just use it to build personal brands. I don't think we actually talked about personal brands back then. Chris, is that right? I mean, we talked about actually trying to help people and gain sort of the value of helping people through reciprocity and like good old-fashioned social science and social values out of that. My friend Lee, who put this list together, I think about, wow, how many of these folks we're just still here, still trying to be relevant. But more importantly, that's the community. Brian Kramer, Lee, Tamara McCleary, Carlos Gill, Darren Rouse, Brian Clark, Stephanie Agresta, Laura Fitton. I mean, these are all folks that still today, and all of the new folks who are taking over this whole world, it was all about a community. I mean, I don't know any other thing except the Oscars or whatever, where all of these folks actually get together and still like one another. We actually like one another. I think they pretend to like one another on the other side. But the thing about social media as it was coming up was it wasn't just about the platforms. Actually, we went out to try to bring to life those networks. We came up with this thing called the tech set, where we would bring people together like South by Southwest back in 2007. And we still do it. This is actually going to be our 11th year of doing tech set at South by Southwest. But we were called geeks who never partied in high school. I don't know, I mean, maybe the BOAs gave it away. It's Pete Cashmore from Mashable. Gary, Scott Beal from Laughing Squid. I mean, these are things, 2007, 2008. I don't know if you know some of these folks, but the gentleman on the left is Charles Foreman. He came up with an app called Draw Something. The guy he's carrying is David Karp. He sold Tumblr for $1 billion to Yahoo. These were the geeks. This is what we would just hang out and talk to one another. There's Tony Shea of Zappos, I Justine, a young me. Gosh, it's hard to look at that. I'm just going to click forward. The guy next to me on this is Cal. He started a little company called Slack. You know these guys. This is when they didn't really have something like it is today. These are the days where we were all just talking about what we were going to work on and how we could try to change the world together. It was literally a community in the real world. You ever heard of Flash Mob? Yeah, well, here's how it all started. Gary was at a party in South by Southwest, standing in a line, and said, dude, this sucks. Called me and a buddy named Frank Gruber, and we tweeted, I don't think we could actually do this anymore, but we tweeted, hey everybody, let's meet at the Omni. We've got a bunch of wine. Within 15 minutes, hundreds of people, I mean, it led to a story. These are the days. I don't know that I could actually do this anymore. This is my personal contribution to the world, by the way. So my friend Chris Messina, back in the day, talked about how can we index Twitter conversations so that we could search for that content related to conferences. My friend Stowe Boyd and I, we had these conversations about, well, you know, we could do this, we could do that, but Chris Messina said we could use a pound sign, use a hashtag as a means of documenting conversations. And my thing to that was, well, yeah, we can make it a hand sign. This is the first ever picture of that, which led to a movement, which led to a bingo game at South by Southwest, which led to the Roots, to Yeah, right? So proud of myself. So then we realized we were onto something and there was more to do than just hashtag hand signs. Thought we could actually build a community around social media. I mean, these are the early days. This is where there were sparse voices. It was the usual suspects. And my friends, Chris Hewer and Christy Wells, his wife, started a thing called the Social Media Club. Can you please let me know if you know about the Social Media Club? All right, yeah, that was, I think it's 2007. All around the world, social media clubs started to pop up. And the whole thing was, if you get it, you share it. The thing about social media that was special then and is still special today is that it was just people helping people. And that's what I think when, regardless of if you're a business or a brand or you're trying to sell something, it was just putting people together. We didn't try to make money from it. It was just, wow, could we change the world? And early on, I felt, wow, this is really starting to grow really fast. There are so many networks to track. Every day there's another network. Web 2.0 was really contributing to the whole world of social media. And Jess 3 and I decided that we were going to try to track it. We were going to try to organize all of the emerging networks by how people were using it so that we, as social media practitioners and evangelists, could use a map to help us figure out how we were going to develop strategies. This is 2007, 2008, and this one graphic is what gave birth to things like Radian 6 back in the day. It inspired companies to actually start to help track all of these social networks. Now we're on, all of these years later, version 5.0. And it is almost a full-time job for me to still do this. In fact, there was 3 years in between 4.0 and 5.0 to document this. But social media is still evolving, it's still growing. It's yours to continue to shape. But believe it or not, people wanted posters of this stuff. There are something like 40,000 posters out there in the world of different versions because we were trying to bring social media to the mainstream. Lee, I don't know if you're here, but I decided to date you a little bit. Have you ever been to a conference and you used to see tweets up on the screens as people were talking? Well, you can blame me and a guy named Greg and a guy named Stowe for that. Back in the mid-2000s, we came up with a product called Front Channel where we thought, wouldn't it be cool, because Twitter was just brand new, wouldn't it be cool if we could take tweets and have people from the audience participate in the panel in real time? By the way, it totally distracted from the panel. But it was called, I think Lee called it the panel heard around the world because it's the first time that you were able to engage with the audience through Twitter, on stage, in real time. And we called that panel Short Attention Span Theater. And it was literally brought to life. Social media gave birth to a whole new genre of celebrities. Hide your kids, hide your wife. How awesome is she, right? Gosh, she made me laugh so much. I even got to do Lexus commercials with Whitney Cummings, which was awesome, which went to show how even someone like me could sell a car. Yeah, that was before my retirement, but it's just continuing to change. I mean, I'm obviously in the wrong business. 16 million before endorsements just from YouTube, right? The whole conversation about influence is just really different. I mean, it's amazing to watch Justine, a friend of mine since, gosh, I mean, before she was Justine. Now, not just a social media celebrity, but she's on television and she's in movies. I mean, it really just gave all of us the opportunity to create our own destiny, almost like that adage, I tweet, therefore I am. It's like selfie actualization. Now there are television shows about social media, right? Because of the power that you have. And the thing I still can't get my mind around is the fact that there has to be a television show to tell businesses, if you don't have a good business, a good product, or a good service, people aren't going to like it. And people now have a voice, and they're going to use that. And so many business owners today are like, well, we should just take Yelp down. Or you could have a good business. I think that's all anybody's really trying to say here. And then social started to become more than just a communications channel. In 2007, I wrote a thing called the Social Media Manifesto. And it was my love letter to all of us, a long time ago. And it was about the gift we were given and how we could use it as a way to not just improve how we communicate with people, but why we communicate with people. Why we think we matter. What that renewed purpose was to be part of a democratized society where they had a voice and we had a voice. And when we come together, what are we going to do with that moment? This is the cover. I got a publisher who had read that back in 2007 and wanted to make a book out of it. And this was the book cover for it. And I never wrote it. We just got too busy with stuff. And my friend Jeremiah Aoyang, I remember, if you're a community manager here in the audience, he's the guy that gave you Community Manager Day. That was a thing. It was so big. It was all around the world. It was always on the last Monday of every January. And then I really started to become inspired by the possibility of what social media meant. What if social media meant, if we are now becoming more human in how we talk and how we market and how we listen, what if we use social media as an opportunity to reevaluate why we're in business in the first place? And as you were thinking about whatever your Twitter strategy was, or your Facebook strategy was, your blog or YouTube strategy, what if we could use those as opportunities to deliver stories and messages and content and value that added to people's lives? What if social media was so big it added 2 new categories of marketing that weren't just us trying to fight for budget or resources, but that it was legitimate in its promoted and shared aspects of how we talk to and through people to create movements? It was bigger than any form of marketing before it, and yet here we are today in 2018, still fighting for it to matter in the marketing mix. Yet my colleague Charlene Lee and I were able to find that those businesses who were investing in social media that way, I think Dan Gingiss is somewhere in here where when he was at Discover, we were able to show how businesses actually could grow profits if they literally became more social. It wasn't just use social media. It was, what does it mean to be more transparent? What does it mean to actually be social? And then I did research with LinkedIn that actually documented the ROI of relationships. We spent a lot of time showing if you invest in great communications with customers and employees in these channels, you win. Because up until that point, I used to say ROI stood for return on ignorance. What's the cost of not doing this stuff? It's probably easier to figure that out. But look at how far social came. We have IPOs. We have failed billion-dollar acquisitions. I mean, Tumblr used to be huge. But now we have Instagram's acquisition, and Instagram's taking down Snapchat in a whole lot of ways. We have Pinterest, which just hired its first COO, which signals that it's going for IPO. We have Slack that's going for its IPO. If I only got shares instead of giving people champagne at these parties. Oh my goodness. But here's why I became an anthropologist. Because along the way, and this is why when Chris talked about how I vanished, I got sucked in to the research of understanding social media's effect on us. Not just as marketers or brand strategists, but as human beings. How social media was changing us as individuals. Studying things like the psychology of Twitter, because at the time Twitter was so massive. This is something I said back in 2007, 2008, and I am floored at the fact that I see this tweeted all the time. But I still believe in it, that social media is less about technology and more about social science. And this is where your work, understanding people, understanding why people connect, understanding that people have audiences of audiences of audiences, that they're not just sitting there waiting for you to tweet what you had for dinner last night. Or Instagram, sorry, because we have to be a little bit more modern. I gave it an official name so it sounds like very serious. The law of accelerated selfie disruption. So here's why I dedicated myself to social science on this, is that social media literally changed us. How we behave, how we think, how we make decisions, what we value and why, who we surround ourselves and why, norms, belief systems. I called it the new human network, and it was really interesting that back then that I was able to start documenting how our online activities were spilling over into the real world. Whereas I think most people just thought we were bringing our real world stuff online, we just started to change. We started to see these global internet cultures. It's why cat memes are funny everywhere. But what was really happening is that these social networks were becoming sort of an operating system for us, and how we use them in their own ways to project not only who we wanted to be, but why. And it used to be that people would wonder why you didn't follow them back, because it was almost like following was like a form of currency. Philosophy, the meaning of like. That these things started to become a form of social currency, and that we tried to earn more of them. We tried to earn more likes, more followers, more retweets, more comments, more shares. And what that started to do to us, I documented as what I called behavior graphics, is that there were certain types of us that were evolving as a means of social media. Is that maybe somebody doesn't talk, maybe somebody just wants to read or curate or overshare or solve problems or self-promote. But we started to form these buckets where people became brands and brands tried to become people. And now everybody's an influencer. In their own way, everybody influences someone else. How many people in this audience remember clout? Right? Okay, so everybody else who didn't raise their hands, not even gonna bother. There was a time where people were graded based on all of this stuff we're talking about, likes and followers and what have you. It's not gone. Clout might be gone for the time being, but I promise you something else is on the horizon. I no longer can make fun of the Kardashians. In fact, I am jealous. I wouldn't be up here if I could tweet something or Instagram something and then suddenly make a few $1,000,000. You can blame Kendall Jenner for the hoverboards, and that's not a joke. She was one of the first to Instagram herself riding around in her house, and suddenly they were everywhere. Or, oh, snap, I think it sucks. Okay, the company just lost $1 billion when you said that. The thing to remember, though, is that I know influence is a big topic in social media, but we have to remember that it's not just popularity. It's not just based on how many followers you have or how many YouTube views you have. It's actually built on trust. If you follow Edelman's trust barometer, you'll see that trust has never been lower, right? In government officials and CEOs. But what keeps skyrocketing is trust in people like you. And I think this is why social media has never been more powerful, and why marketing has never been more powerful, in that you can earn trust among your peers, and trust pays off in reciprocity. And reciprocity, well, you can translate that into cash or whatever you want that you value. But I think where we're at right now, and what we started to see in the last year, is what I call the end of social media 1.0. This is your generation to shape now, because it is at a crossroads. And that's what we're going to talk about, the present and the future. I don't know if you're like me, but sometimes I find myself walking while I'm texting or searching or looking at social networks. And what that's doing is creating a society of digital introverts. Not a bad thing, it's just, it is what it is, where we're looking more at our devices than we have ever before. I don't know if you know this or not, but we look at our devices about 1,500 times a week. And it's about 177 minutes a day. And that time is doing something versus doing something else. But it's also changing how you communicate. Whether you know it or not, you're literally reprogramming your brain. Where you know what I'm talking about. When I wrote my last book, which is ironic, about designing experiences for a digital economy in a book, I studied attention spans. And it's not a myth. It's just, it's not that we've lost it, it's just it's different. It's just wired differently. It comes in and out, it floats between digital and analog. It's just, we have to understand now what that means to do things when you go back. Yes, of course we all love to read. But put on a Pomodoro timer and see how long you can do it before you're distracted. It's just different now. And as a marketer, or as a content strategist, or just as a human being, these are things that are affecting us. I spent the last year and a half writing a paper for a big global famous beauty company. And they wanted me to figure out how social media was affecting your definition of self-beauty. And that was Pandora's box. But it was an example to show you just how deep we're getting into all of this without necessarily realizing how much we're changing. The thing that I had learned in all of that research, whether it's about beauty, self-esteem, or whatever, is that we're caught up in a system that is encouraging us and validating us to use it more and more and more, and it's changing us more and more and more. The reason why we're at a crossroads is that social media needs to be taken back by us. Who we are and who we want to be. And not be so intoxicated by the responses of what we decide to share. I call sort of all of us accidental narcissists. How's that first bite? Cold. This is a cartoon I had a friend of mine draw where you're in the moment. You have so many platforms you want to share this moment in. Where does it go? Too late. You missed it. Now there are museums, specifically in San Francisco, the Museum of Ice Cream and the Color Museum, that are designed for Instagram. They design the entire experience for selfies. There's very little museum-esque qualities going on. Like, what is the history of ice cream? It doesn't matter, there's sprinkles. Cool. Not a joke, this is like real stuff. Now we have Instagram. Live your best life. one more time. Right? We all do it. But it's not our fault. None of us sought out to become accidental narcissists. It's just that that's what technology taught us to do. I mean, think about this. If you were on the ship last night, I'm pretty sure you shared some of that on Instagram or Snapchat or your network of choice. And we are wired to immediately go back into that app and see how many likes we got. And if you didn't, you're like, what is going on? I thought everybody was waiting for that picture. And now you have all of these folks trying to get on the right side of history. Oh yeah, well, we made it to be addictive, but I don't like it. Which is not okay. Do you know that the like button was designed with the same principles that go into slot machine design? It's now called design ethics, and this is a story that's starting to make its way into the light of just how addictive all of these things were meant. And for all of you in the audience who have children, they were the prey. So now is this time where we have to take social media back. And when Mike talked earlier today about bringing the humanity back into social media, I mean, it's quite literal. This is a quote from a chief designer at Facebook. We had the power of gods without the wisdom, prudence, and compassion of gods. They knew what they were doing. I have an app in Silicon Valley called Filled, which is basically the Uber of gasoline. I can open the app, even if I'm not in Silicon Valley, tell it where my car is, and have a truck pull up alongside of my car and fill it up. Cost me $2.99 delivery fee, and then it's actually a competitive rate. And people say, Brian, that is lazy. And I say, well, wait a minute. You need to tell me what you love about the gas station experience. Am I missing something? Must be the bathrooms. Once you taste something, you want it. And that's the standard. And that's what all of this is doing to us. And so this is actually a real thing. People are calling Ubers instead of ambulances. And so it's forcing these Uber drivers to go fast to the hospital. And well, I'm just in a Prius. And I want 5 stars. So I promise this is not going to get political.